Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great webinar on tap, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, just know you'll be able to watch it later on demand. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's webinar you have a question for either of our panelists, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your question that way. And we'll take a few minutes near the end of today's presentation and go over those questions. Okay, and finally, at the end of today's webinar, we are going to be doing a drawing for 3 $50 Amazon gift cards. So stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 3 big winners. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Value Streams, Accelerate Your DevOps Journey. Our speakers today, who are turning on their webcams now, are Jeff Keyes, who is Director of Product Marketing at Plutora, and James Gregory, who is Solutions Architect at Plutora. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me today, and on camera nonetheless.
Thank you. Yeah, that was quite the cue.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad you got my hint. All right, guys. Well, I know you have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to get off camera. I'm going to put myself on mute and let you get right to it.
Fantastic. I love this topic because value streams is a really interesting. It's a different way of looking at what people are doing with DevOps and how you manage it. Today in our agenda, we're going to look through 4 parts. One, really the discussion of value stream management and why I give a crap. What does it even mean anymore? How and when to do it, the actual running the value streams and the mapping, and we'll dive into questions after that. But just to jump right in, if you haven't been on one of our webinars before, I'm a marketing guy. Granted, I see a lot of theory. I've got background in doing development and so forth. But what's awesome about this is we get to have James with us. And James, you've got a lot of background because you actually get to meet with customers all the time and you're in the process of helping them through these experiences. So we'll get to glean some of these stories and so forth as we get going in. So why do I even care about all this crap, James? What are you hearing? What's it even matter?
Really, it comes down to, today you can't afford not to understand your value streams. So, you have to understand exactly what you're delivering, how you're delivering it, and how long it's taking. There's just no question.
It's funny. I was recently at another conference, and I remember this concept is now getting so well accepted. A slide went up saying it was a quote from a customer saying, "Look, we'll have wasted almost $1 billion if we can't get visibility into our delivery chain." And it's massive how much money has gone on, given the enormity of the effort of digital transformation, given the cost of the tooling, given the amount of time and effort that has gone into the individual process changes and into the culture and practices. And yet, if at the end of the day you can't measure improvement, how do you actually know that you've done better? I feel badly for the mass of management over application delivery when they get stuck with yet another methodology, yet another tool, yet another type and style that they've been hearing for years. And yet you can't really say, are we doing better than we did before? Have we improved? Have we increased the value that we deliver to customers? I love this quote. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That really takes us into what is value stream management and really where we go. So James, what is value stream management?
So we've put a paragraph on the left-hand side there. So as we mentioned, it's really around visualizing your software delivery. You may have heard the term value stream mapping as part of value stream management. And really that's an exercise which we'll cover as part of this webinar, but value stream management is the whole thing. So it's taking your various value streams, which are effectively the route that a product or what we see as the value takes from inception to delivery to a customer, be it end customer or internal customer, and actually measuring how long it takes and what steps it goes through to get there. So that's kind of value stream management.
Very cool. And I'm supposing what's the start and end of that? Is it just once I have code, where's the starting point and what's the ending point?
The starting point really is inception of an idea. It's, I want to do something in order to deliver X value or go quicker, etc. So that's kind of where it starts. And the end point is, from a customer's perspective, did I get what I want? Did I get value for my money, for all of the work that's gone into it? So it's really from idea inception right through to delivery and then feedback after that.
Gotcha. So if management is measuring, tell me about, why do I need to capture software delivery metrics? What's that look like?
Cool. So real example I had a few weeks ago was speaking to a CIO, and he was saying to me, I really want to understand, and he didn't actually use the term value stream management or value stream mapping or anything like that. He said, I get all of these projects coming through and they've all got a ROI assigned to them, and then they're being delivered, and then I'm not seeing the return on that investment. I'm not seeing the money that we've saved, additional sales, etc. He said, so what I'm really doing is I'm going into my requirements management system, which was Jira in this instance. And he said, and I'm looking at there to try and understand how long things take, and if there's any issues, any kind of bottlenecks or constraints in there, to actually uncover the reason for it. And what he was doing without actually knowing it was describing value stream management.
That's spot on. And I find it fascinating, given the style of development for years that we've gone, where we've had these big planning organizations that have created these massive budgets and projects with expected ROI, and then handed that off and said, well, we hope that works out, without actually going back and connecting the dots. I'm surprised that this has been an acceptable practice for so long. No wonder that whole organization is changing and becoming more product centric and getting absorbed into the products. Can you talk a bit about the strategic direction and how that's how this mentality has impacted strategy?
So most organizations have a strategy around their software delivery. It's, I want to increase my velocity, my release velocity. I want to stave off disruptors. I want to improve the quality by reducing the defects. So, these top level statements about how you want to make things better. And how do you know if you're achieving those strategic directions unless you're measuring what you're doing? Because the answer is, oh, I don't know, it's just something that's done by developers, or it's just something that's done in testing. It just doesn't cut it anymore. As a CIO, you need to have these answers. You need to know the route that your delivery takes and what you're getting out of it at the end.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm convinced from a marketing perspective that had we had this topic of measuring and managing value streams 2 years ago, I don't think we'd have as much interest as we've had today. I think everyone all the way down is getting asked the same questions. I think if you're on the development side or the engineering, you're being asked to produce these metrics. If you're on the product side, you're interested in using these metrics versus gut feel for moving things forward. And everyone's needing to be involved in this, and so they're asking the same common questions. Well, are we doing better than we did before? What metrics should I be producing? Because I know I have to deliver things, and then how do I actually go about capturing this, and what a pain it is to actually capture these things. Which really takes us to the next question. So, what metrics? what should I be capturing? Really,
key ones are velocity. we touched on it before, how fast am I getting my change through? Am I still doing, typical waterfall delivery, maybe, one release every 6 months, one release a year? Have I embraced Agile, DevOps ways of working? But effectively, how quickly am I going, and how quickly can I meet the business's needs? So how quickly can I get this brand new feature out that's going to win us all additional sales, or is a compliance requirement, unless we get out, there's going to be fines, repercussions. So that's kind of the first one, is velocity. Secondly is quality, really. So this is around, we talked before about inception through to delivery. That's the actual value stream. This kind of comes in at the delivery side of things. So, you just don't get to production, throw it over the fence into production, and then all is well within the world. It's all, your job's done. It's kind of, well, did the customer get what they wanted? Are they happy with what was delivered for them? And this could be an internal customer as well. Also, was it any good? Did it break something else? What's the impact? If you've got an operations team, are you hurting those people by what you've just delivered? So that's the other side of it as well. And then thirdly, onto cost. So we touched on it before. So what was the promised ROI? Did they deliver that? How much did it cost for all those developers, all those testers, etc., to actually get this out into the real world? So they're the kind of three fundamentals that you should definitely be capturing.
Yeah, it's interesting that I love what the DevOps Research Institute has done, the DORA, sorry, I should say, just in those metrics of measuring velocity and quality, and combining that with high performers, medium and low performers, and what the impact of the business has been, that that if you can measure those, at least from check-in forward, you're going to do a bunch of stuff. We thought it'd be interesting to look at other research that's been done, however, to see what other people are measuring, and kind of talk about that for a second. So Forrester came out with did an analysis of what people are measuring. So how do you measure your team's success on delivery? And you might think, sure, when I go and I look at some of the things that I use to measure my success of any particular delivery, how did I do? And I'm guessing that some of your points would be included up here. Here's the part that I find most interesting. If we're talking about value streams, if we're talking about delivering value to the customer, which ones of these are actually that? Sure, quality, do no harm. Okay, I didn't blow up production when I did my release. Awesome. But frankly, we're still in the vast minority of what we're measuring. A direct measurement of customer satisfaction or user acceptance, like a net promoter score or that kind of things, or business metrics like what's our increase in revenue or our actual ROI. Frankly, at the end of the day, do our customers care that features and user stories or how many story points were delivered? Does that really matter? Does it really matter the mean time to repair? They just sort of have these things. Now, those points are interesting. They're valuable to us because we're in the process of delivering software. But why is it that the direct measurement of customer value is still in the minority? It really should be one of the main things that we do, and we have to up that. And we have to use other metrics where we're bringing in these business value metrics into the story much more so than we've done in the past. What's your thoughts on this, James?
Definitely. It feels that you're kind of really restricting yourself if you're not actually going to, if you stop at production, you stop measuring there, you've delivered something, but not actually saying you've delivered the right thing or you've delivered the thing well. And actually, was it still the right thing to deliver by that point? So you kind of feel like you're constraining yourself if you don't go that extra mile with it. And as you say, quality, the way things are at the moment, you really cannot afford to send out low quality content.
Yep. And what's interesting is the research shows that the higher the frequency that you're able to produce because you've got things more automated, you would think that the quality would go down, when in fact, the quality goes up. So very interesting. So all right, well, that's a whole lot of stuff. How the crap am I going to capture all that?
Um, right. So this is kind of saying, how do I start doing value stream management? So we've kind of talked on what value stream management is. We've kind of talked on what a value stream is. So a value stream being effectively a journey the value goes on, the value being the end product, for
Right.
example. So a value stream could be multiple things. It could be a release, it could be a business function. It's something that needs to be comparable, because effectively you're going to take a value stream and then compare it against that same value stream when you've made a change, is effectively what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be comparable. So if you've got a release that has multiple components that deal with multiple applications, you can't measure that against a different release that's touching different applications, because it would make no sense. So that's kind of the value stream in place on there. So you need to decide what your value stream is. As long as it's comparable, there's no real wrong answer, because you're measuring the same thing. So it could be a release, if you always do a release to the same applications, for example, or it could be a business function such as HR or CRM that are made up of the same applications. So
And
it's
I'm
up to you.
assuming I could compare, I mean, really what I would want to do is I can compare one release versus doing the same thing again for the next version. Might be the easiest one. Is that what you're thinking?
Definitely, definitely. So once you've actually got your value stream and everyone's happy with what your value stream is, then you really need to split that value stream up into logical buckets. So you don't have to go to the granular level, because we're staying quite high level with this. So if you keep to say, design, build, test as generic buckets that you can effectively describe your journey through, that's fine, but it differs organization by organization. But have these generic buckets that you can use to actually map your journey through your organization. Does that make sense?
It does. Can you give some examples of those logical buckets?
So, as I mentioned, you could do, design to cover all of that, requirements gathering, defining what the epics are going to be, user stories, etc.
Sure.
Then the build part of it, and then depending how you split that out, obviously test is the QA aspect. You can put the automation into that aspect as well. But these are just, keeping it nice and high level, not worrying too much about the details at this stage.
Gotcha. Cool.
So once we've then got those buckets, effectively you need to understand, you need to measure that. You need to measure that value stream. So you need to understand, how am I going to get those data points, those measurement points? You've got a bunch of tools, some of them for requirements management, some of them for test management, deployment tools, etc. So you need to work out which of those tools contains the data points, the metrics that you're actually looking to get out of there. So, is it all held within tools? Is some of it manual? Are you going to have to calculate some of it? Those are the things you need to look at next. So, do you have the data you need available to you today?
Sure. Most likely the answer is not, and you're going to have to do some work to gather it, and that's okay. So where does running a mapping session fit into this?
So traditionally, a mapping session is, you get a room, bunch of your top people that can speak across your entire value stream. So representatives from development, test, release, etc. And then effectively take their time and get a picture of how long that value takes to move through the stream. And some of it's going to be subjective, some of it's going to be a bit emotive, because effectively you're saying, how well do you do your job? How, are you the bottleneck? Are you the constraint in our process? And no one's going to admit to that.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if that's necessarily bad. I think the point is, I think in the times that I've been through this, it's interesting to see that I find commonly that, this person here didn't know that this was happening over here, and there's this, wait, you're doing what, and didn't really know end to end what was happening. And I think by getting people involved in just a session of value stream management or value stream mapping, that you start to learn really all the things that are going on. I've always called this old school, but frankly, it works really well. And it's a very big value to, when you step back and look at the entire process. We actually produced a blog on how to do value stream mapping. It's up there. It's pretty simple. It's not a huge investment of time, but it's an enormous impact to the improvement of what it can do for your organization. Highly recommend going through this blog. There's a bunch of other offshoots to it. It doesn't require any software. It just, frankly, a lot of things are just getting people together. The actual session of doing a value stream mapping session is pretty straightforward. You can, like I said, go through the blog. The foundations are there. Get yourself the group together that can talk from ideation all the way through. You're going to have to know 3 areas. You're going to have an understanding of, have enough people in the room that have an understanding of the information flow, including the customer, and that's going to be involved, and the people that understand the product flow, what actually happens. You have to have one person that knows how to do a value stream mapping session, which just, hey, that can be you. You're on the call. Go read the blog. It's not that hard. And the whole goal is you're just measuring value add time versus non-value add time. That's it. That's the entirety. Now you can be more sophisticated and try to get things like percent complete and accurate, and those are good things because that'll help you with some of the other calculations in terms of your prioritization. But frankly, just running this little session to go from as you talked about it, James, the buckets. Your ideas to testing to development and so forth and on into release. I think you'll learn a lot of things that you didn't know before, and as you do this over and over again, you'll get a lot more. What are you seeing, James, as you do this? What kinds of things are you seeing come out of these sessions?
Well, we had a customer, and actually we were looking at the systems administration space. So there was tickets being passed over there for some systems administrators to do some work, and they had an SLA assigned to these tickets. Mm-hmm. It actually turned out that the systems administrator wasn't even looking at the ticket until 2 days before the SLA was due to expire, because they felt that they didn't actually have to do anything as long as they were in SLA. It was all fine. So all that initial lead time to that point was completely wasted, and they didn't actually see that they were a problem there.
I think that really is the point. There's a lot of things that are just waste simply from the point of handoffs. And when you do these kinds of sessions, you'll find that those are some hot spots that you'll notice. You'll notice hot spots when you have one team building up too much work and they're creating too much, too big of a chunk for that to flow through the pipe. That's waste time because they're building too much. You don't need to spend so much there. You'll be able to notice where your constraints are. What are your long lead times? And look at ways that it doesn't take a whole lot to do this. You don't need really sophisticated tooling to go through this process. It's pretty straightforward. And frankly, it's more about having the guts to get everybody in a room to have the conversation and walk the process through. And James, that's a really funny story. So do this process. You don't need a whole lot to just get started. It takes time in order to gather more data, but that's okay. So the question, James, always comes down to when do I start? How do I, when do I actually get rolling?
So as we put on the slide there, it's never too early or too late to do this. It doesn't matter where you are on your maturity journey. If you're not doing it today, then do it today, because the value you get from this is just amazing. We have exceptions being put forward by customers saying, oh, I'm not mature enough to do this. I just don't have these numbers. I don't have the data points that we need. It's like, well, identify what you need and then look about what tools you can go to get that, or do you need another tool to actually operate in that space that can give you those metrics? Because, you know, even if you're not getting this stuff from a tool, you can have, especially with value stream mapping, you can have ranges. How long does it take on a good day? How long does it take on a bad day? You can start bringing these numbers in, but you should start getting these numbers available. Other things we have is people saying, you know, I'm partway through a digital transformation. Is it really going to help? And it's like, you're partway through a digital transformation, but you don't have the baseline numbers from the starting of the digital transformation. So how do you know how well your digital transformation is going? Test automation. Are you automating in the right places, or are you doing a scattergun approach and just automating the easiest thing? Is it really making any difference on that value stream?
Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's fine. And the other one is, you know, I'm already transformed. I'm fully agile, fully DevOps.
We've arrived. I'm done. No more improvement necessary. Woohoo! Right?
Yeah. But really, again, if you're not measuring this stuff, how do you know if you're getting any better? You know, where's the continual service improvement? You know, how are you optimizing? You need the numbers in place, no matter where you are on the journey. Even if you're right at the beginning, great, take a baseline and then show your improvement. You know, tell everyone about how well you've improved.
Awesome. That's really good. What, you know, let's just dive into, though, showing value quickly. And you know, this is kind of scary, I think, for most people to say, I'm going to pull the whole team together. I'm going to get going on this. If I don't show some value quickly, I'm going to have serious egg on my face. So how do I actually get going, and how do I, you know, show value quickly so that I don't have egg on my face and I can say, look, this is the right process to go through?
So, you know, go with what you know. Don't make it hard on yourself. So if you've got a value stream that's, you know, a project that you know well, that's quite high profile, you know, start with that, because it's going to resonate enough with people, and you're going to have most of the information up front anyway to get you started. So don't start with obscure, really small areas that just are not going to resonate. Start small. So start looking at, you know, what can you easily measure today? So is it, you know, phases of your testing? Is it your number of deployments? What is it? Every little helps. You know, keep it simple, and as I say, keep it high level as well, especially with value stream management and value stream mapping. We're not necessarily going down to the granular level here. We're looking at the high level, what the numbers are at that space. Then effectively start left and work right as you can. So, you know, you're doing some CI. Okay, well, what metrics can you get out of your CI? You've thrown some test automation in there, different types. Well, you know, what can you pull from those tools? What numbers are there? And then obviously moving on to deployments. Are you still doing manual deployments, or have you moved across to fully automated deployments? So take the numbers where you can and identify where you've got gaps and you can't pull those numbers today.
Very cool. So jumping to the steps of actually moving from value stream mapping to value stream management, let's talk about that a little bit, because it's different. Value stream mapping is just a portion of managing the value stream. What does that look like? And I think we've actually got another slide on that too. Hang on a second. Do you want to talk a bit about that? And I'll jump through the...
Sure, no worries. So yeah, value stream mapping is just an activity that takes place as part of value stream management. So value stream mapping is effectively taking a picture of today of the movement across the value stream, and then producing a like a target picture of that same. So okay, so what happens if I implemented test automation? What difference would that have what benefits would that give me?
Mm-hmm.
And then actually having that as is and to be picture, and then identifying how you get there. And then that becomes your initiatives that you need to perform in order to get to that kind of target state. So that's kind of value stream mapping.
If you look at this in the broader view of how you put all the pieces together and do this in a systematic way and implement systems to manage your value stream, in essence, you're putting a system in place to manage a federated set of systems. It's a management tool on top of the tool chains themselves. And really the process that you want to go through is you could kind of think of in 4 steps. That the first one is baselining, where you're going to create a value stream map of your planning, your dev test, delivery process. You'll track your learnings, because through that process you'll come up with your Kaizen burst. There's, like I said, there's lots of good books on this. Go through the blog. It's a great first step. You don't have to be super sophisticated to do this. You can bring in consultants to do this if you want, if you need that help, but you really don't need to. Just get people together. It's not that hard. If you draw the simplistic symbols, you put the sticky notes on the board, you're going to do that. The key thing that will flow out of this are the KPIs for value delivery. And there's enough here. If you want to look at it from a value system, we put up some that you could look at. If you want to look at it from just purely a DevOps point of view, those are also pretty well documented, and you've got enough. But the point is, map your tool chain. You have to know tool to tool where are things going. Map your value stream. You've got to know how the value flows through. Look at the timings, and the KPIs will fall out of that. What happens next out of that is you're going to have these discoveries. Why the crap are we spending so much time in one area or another? We should fix that and not have these handoff and wait times. We should automate these areas. Let's reduce the work in progress on these other areas and figure that out. Let's unify our tool chain. That gets into the step 2 of this, where you're going to integrate and measure. You want to unify your tool chain. A converged tool chain is a concept that we talk about here in Plutora, where we actually use tooling to connect your planning tools over to your development work, to your testing tools, all the way into operations. There's value as you do that, because you're making the work visible. You're making what development is doing automatically visible to what's happening in operations. You're interconnecting things. You can then also create real-time measurements, and with that you can then map the initiatives that you're doing. As you map out your environments, your release and deployments, and how the initiatives are going through, you can then abstract your tool chains and just say, hey, look, there's a common data for all this data, for all this that's flowing through, and you can store that where you can now report on it. From there, you can then go to the next step in the process, which is strategically improve. This is your process of taking, and you're going to have future states of what you want to improve and where you want to focus. And when you create that future state map, that future state value stream map, you'll then have the areas that have been adjusted where you can focus and show, hey, we think we're only going to spend this much time now on requirements because we've reduced the amount of time that we're spending there, and we're going to have them more iterative. Or we've reduced the amount of time in testing because we're going to automate that. Or we reduced the deployment time down because we've automated that. Those are the whole points. That's your constraints that you're targeting as you go do that. A key note here, you're looking to improve value flowing through the system. If you're fixing an area that isn't the constraint, you're not really speeding things up. And oftentimes when people go down a digital transformation, the message has been just purely automate, automate, automate. Automate's not bad. Automation is good, but make sure you're addressing the constraints. It could be in your planning. It could be that so many people go to automate deployments and they go, wait a minute, we haven't automated our testing. We can't really get our testing down any further. Are you really improving anything if you did this great automated build, but yet you can't get your testing incorporated into that cycle? You've got to look at those things. So that strategically improve means make sure when you select your future state that you're picking on the constraints and you're fixing the constraints. Those bottlenecks are critical. Finally, the last step in this is more of an iteration to expand the influence from whether it be a pipeline or teams or the various environments. You don't have to be 100% Agile driven, DevOps driven to get value here. This works across any kind of level of maturity. So moving forward, since I just went through a spiel, what do I get at the end? What will value stream management actually give me? And what have you been seeing, James, as you get out there?
So, well, one example I heard of as well was the actually, these initiatives aren't always, the answer's not always a tool. It could be a change to your business process may speed things up.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, once you've actually hit the constraints and you've seen those improvements from removing those constraints, it's really then moving on to optimizing each stage as you go along, which you'll actually see the benefit of those, those days coming back to you as well from that space. So it is more of a continual service improvement in that space as well. So,
yep.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. I didn't interrupt you.
No, that's fine. So as you say, the benefits are really there. You've got your value stream map, you've got your to-be value stream map, and you've got all these little initiatives that will actually get you there. And you can really start measuring the benefits that gives you. These aren't just initiatives that you hope will improve things, as you say, automate in the right places, the places that are hurting you today.
Yeah, and part of the reason to do a value stream map and a value stream mapping session as part of value stream management is you do gain consensus along the way. People decide together, oh my gosh, it becomes painfully clear to the point where it's almost like the different groups that I've seen do this end up kind of pointing the finger and blaming each other. It's like those operations, those security guys or the governance guys, change advisors, they really suck. I can't believe they slow us down so much. Meanwhile, those groups are pointing the finger. These guys, when they develop software, they're not building the right stuff. The security guys are saying, hey, you're not doing threat modeling. And gosh, when you get everybody in a room, most interesting thing happens. You start looking at where the time's actually spent, and you might have a security, a security team say, hey, look, if you did threat modeling during the process, I could completely eliminate this whole phase here. All I would need to do is to say, you did that as part of the process, I'm done, check. I know that you did your job right. And I can point to it and I can audit it. Wow, we just eliminated 3 weeks off the end. And we architected security into the process. We're now doing more DevSecOps. You could do the same with architecture boards, with governance, any aspect. That's the point. And you start to get efficiencies that bring the team together versus the silos that are there. But in order to get there, you got to get people in a room to talk about what's the whole process, which is back to value stream mapping, which really, talk to us a bit about the challenges with traditional value stream mapping for a second.
So with traditional value stream mapping, as we mentioned, you have to pull people into the room, to the workshop, from all of those areas across your value stream. So your developers, your architects, etc. These are high-level people in your organization. You're effectively pulling them out of their day job for a number of days while you do these workshops. You're also mainly doing this on a paper-based exercise. So you've got a massive sheet of paper and you're drawing your value stream maps on those, and you're demonstrating those because there's no point in doing it on a PC or a laptop because they're constantly changing. You're arguing, you're agreeing. So they need to be quite fluid. So paper works best for that. Next thing is it's done on gut feel, especially if you don't have these numbers, these metrics today. It's well, it could be 2 days or it could be 30 days, and that's not really helping you. So then at that point, you're working on ranges. You're not actually down to a specific number. An average doesn't work. So you're on ranges. So it could be great or it could be really bad, and you're not sure where in there it is. And then as you say, it can be emotive. You're effectively almost criticizing people and the job they do today as part of the exercise. So it can be whoever shouts the loudest gets their point across. So that's just a concern to watch. But as you say, if you get people in there mediating it, there's less chance of that happening.
Yeah, I mean, just like, well, my comment there is just like doing code reviews or testing. Get the tone of the meetings that you do while you're doing the traditional style, focused on improving the process. That's the basis. We're all here to go faster. And as long as you use that, if we're going to critique our own process and we're going to be self-reflective, you'll do better. That way you can start to have a chance to break down some of the silos that are there.
Definitely. And then the last one is, it's a repeatable exercise. It needs to be repeated because you need to see, what's your next value stream map look like? What are your next initiatives going to be? So it's something effectively you have to draw the same people out and then repeat the whole exercise again, and with the expense that we talked about as part of that. So that's the main challenges.
So we thought we'd show a little bit of eye candy of the kinds of metrics to deliver and the things to look at when you get all done. And again, you could use a tool like Plutora to do this, or you could gather this yourself. It really doesn't matter. The model is the same. But one of those things that you could look at is well, walk us through what we're looking at here. James, that's probably the easiest way.
Sure. So what we're looking at here is effectively we've taken a release plan within Plutora, and this can be, Waterfall, can be Agile, whatever you wish, or heterogeneous. And effectively what we're doing then is taking all of the stages that the actual value is going to pass through, and then measuring the duration that we're actually spending in each of those phases today. So then you're actually able to see where some of your constraints are, where the areas for optimization are as well. Other things we're doing here are, we're pulling in costs. So if we can assign a cost to a release or a new product coming out, then we can actually show, what does my costs look like against my different value streams? What are my top performing value streams? Which value streams aren't saving me money? All those kind of numbers can come back to you.
Absolutely. And what's cool here is you want to be able to have this because this is definitive. This is metrics. If you can't get people to agree on their, back of the envelope or rough thumbnail version, then pull some metrics. You'll be able to get them from some of the tools. You just got to aggregate the data together. I think another important one to do is these are good metrics from the DORA side, the key DevOps metrics. They really do show two key areas: your velocity going into production, as well as the failure rates, the quality, if you will. And deployment frequency and lead time for changes is pretty important as you look through that. It's a metric. Granted, I've critiqued this as well on my own side to say, well, deployment frequency, how does this really manage your value going into production? All you really know is more code's going to production. That's good. That's a good positive thing, because the faster you can get to production, that's awesome. You still need to take a wider view, but these are great metrics to go pull. Pretty well documented too on the kinds of things to look at. So what about this, James? This is kind of interesting. You want to talk through this a bit?
Yeah, so this was really about taking DevOps teams and understanding. We talked about visibility, and the use case for this particular report was around not having visibility about what comprised a release. So you've got multiple different teams working on it, all self-contained, but having to go around to those teams to actually pull that information together before you can actually see. This dashboard just gives a visibility of, what epics have I got, what are the underpinning user stories, and what are my pull requests I'm working on? And then that will then lead through to, well, what are my deployments coming through? So it's kind of a holistic view there from a development perspective.
Yeah, one of the things I keep hearing too, as teams move towards more self-directed smaller, two pizza team style delivery, it's great for the individual teams, but they're struggling to actually see what the other teams are doing. There's a lack of transparency, and especially as you move up in terms of the people trying to see what's going on inside the factory. I mean, building a monolith is way easier to see what's going on versus a bunch of little teams. The analogy I've heard used on that is simply it's a lot easier to see the big building getting built versus a lot of small teams figuring their stuff out. And there's some real value here in value stream management tooling that helps you actually aggregate this together and get the visibility across it. Just one more. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, sure. So this is really around change requests, so change management processes within the tool. So, looking at the activities that are performed against the specific environment. So keeping track of all of your requests for deployment, all your changes to compute resources, etc., and just having a view of what work was done on those environments, and then effectively being able to see, okay, so what teams are the busiest? So you can then start looking at your resource constraints around that as well as a potential constraint, as well as process.
Fantastic. Well, just I guess to throw the Plutora commercial in here for just a moment, and then we'll take some questions. Plutora, this is what we do. We're a platform to help you manage your application delivery. And if you had to think about what we do as a platform, there's three basic layers of the solution itself. One, and the most fundamental, is that we integrate and normalize the data from the different tooling. That common data model gives us the ability to speak between the product planning to the dev test tools, all the way into operations and the changes, and correlate that data together. But it's not a one-way integration, it's a two-way synchronization that's going along, which enables the Converge tool chain. Even though it's a federated set of tools that are all speaking similar data that are all correlated together using Plutora. On top of that, we have a management orchestration layer for orchestrating releases, environments, the actual deployment planning and cutover events that incorporate different phases and gates of delivery, that incorporate the governance and the tracking, as well as intermix the human and automated tasks that go on for every single activity. It doesn't matter how far down the DevOps journey you are. We'll help wherever you are and incorporate as much automation as you've got. Ultimately, this all feeds into a significant data warehouse that has a lot of value, giving you deep analytics, comparative metrics. We're incorporating more and more on the predictive metrics using AI/ML. And you can have as part of that a complete governance and tracking, stakeholder notifications. All these things give you true visibility into the pipeline. One of the features is a pipeline view where you can say, okay, I'm looking at a particular set of functionality. I can look across the different environments to see, okay, and on this environment here in integration, it's got the most recent version. I can see what's just in staging, getting ready to go to production, and I can kind of drill through and take a look at any point in time where things are at. The point is, you need a catwalk over your factory floor. That factory is constantly changing because this isn't, typical manufacturing. And you need a way to combine that with everything and get metrics off of it. There's only really one way to do this in a consistent way, and it's to have a tool like Plutora to help integrate these pieces together. That's why Forrester came out and produced the wave on value stream management. These are some of the critical capabilities in there. Plutora is one of the leaders. Strong performers, as I guess were listed. I highly recommend come to our site, take a look at that. We've got that report up on the website and give you some details there. So with that, I think we're at a point of being able to take a few questions and talking about that. Uh-oh, can't hear you,
I
Charlene.
should take myself off mute, huh?
There.
There we go. All right. I think the whole Q&A thing would work a lot better if you could actually hear what I'm asking you. Call me crazy. Okay. We have gotten a ton of questions in so far, so I just want to put it out there right now. We're probably not going to get to them all. If we don't, please, and we don't ask your question during the webinar, please know that the folks at Plutora are getting a copy of all of the questions, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys offline. But let's dive right on into our first question. Is value stream management applicable to any Agile frameworks, such as Scrum, Kanban? If not, how can we achieve it when using Kanban?
Well, I'll take a first whack at this and I'll let the expert talk. But yes, the point of value stream management is you can apply it to any style of delivery that you're doing. For things to end up in a Kanban backlog, that's awesome, because you're still going to look at when the feature was accepted and then walking it through the cycle all the way into delivery. There's interesting metrics in delivery of that. If you haven't seen the Barclays did a talk on the PMO is dead, long live the PMO from Enterprise Summit. It's awesome. And one of the things that he mentions there is he shows a chart of their delivery and how they spent 18 months in all this backlog creation and approvals and project planning for it to end up in the backlog. And then the dev team was celebrating the level of their agility. Yay, we're so agile. And it would spend another 6 months going from that agile team into production. And the point is you've got to be able to, wherever you're at, you've got to be able to start reaching the other directions to see how well are you doing. And are you actually delivering that value in the most optimal way? How can you incorporate these people better? And the only way to break down those silos, break down those walls, is to bring those people in. If you're truly agile and you're truly bringing that together, you're going to bring in DevOps, where you're bringing in from a dev perspective the operations side, and you're going to bring in the planning side. So you end up in the heartbeat of the product-oriented team that's got cross-functional members. And if you've truly got that, and that is our goal, is to have individual self-led teams that are going across all of that. Now, yes, it doesn't matter whether you're Scrumfall, Waterfall, Kanban, doing straight Scrum and iterations. These matter because you can use it anywhere along the journey. James, sorry, I'll leave that one to you.
No, I was just going to say I totally agree with you, and VSM is a core component of Scaled Agile, so definitely applicable there. So,
all right, great. So next question then: how is value stream mapping related to value chain or process map?
Well, so a process map is step to step. A value stream map is more looking at the handoffs. And there's a difference there, because you're looking from group to group and the stages that it goes through. A process map is just step one, step two. This, you're trying to look at it, the flow of value from stage to stage as the customer would see it. And so when you think software, you think, well, somebody's got to think about it. Somebody's got to build it. Somebody's probably going to make sure it's working okay. Someone's going to make sure it's it meets all the right things and getting ready to release and put it in production. You can think of those as your most basic stages. If you need help figuring out what those stages are, again, there's consultants. Reach out to us online as well, and we can talk that through with you. Happy to meet with you to have those conversations as well.
All right, great. I think we have time for one or two more. I would like to start using value stream management for the projects I work on, but starting feels like scaling K2. Where would you recommend I start for projects that have been around for years?
James, you want to take that one? Yeah, sure. So for projects that have been known for years, as I said, identify what tools are involved in this. Look at your tool chain for that particular project. Look at what numbers you can pull for them today. As we talked about, agree what your data points are, because people will agree with the metrics as long as they agree with what your data points were. And just make sure you know that. Then, as we mentioned, start on the left and slowly work your way along the right, and you'll show the benefit as you go along.
I would say too, if you want to implement value stream management, give us a call. We can help accelerate that with you. We can give you some of the reports. You can run a proof of concept with us even. to show some of those metrics for those long-running teams. Those metrics drive everything, because when you say, here's where we're currently at, instantly you'll be able to see areas where there's bottlenecks. And where there's bottlenecks, I tell you, the long-running team, they've already dug their heels in about why they can't, do one thing or another, or they're frustrated with another team. And the minute you give them metrics where they can point the finger and say, hey, those guys over there are slowing us down, people want to improve. And the tool becomes a value in itself.
All right, great. Okay, let's move rapidly along here. How do you convince people that value stream mapping is worth the time and effort? Do you think it is still worth it for just one or two people to attempt a value stream map?
I have some thoughts there, and then James, you can. The basis that I've seen is just simply this: if you can get one person in the room who acts as a change agent, let's say you get a dev lead in the room, or you get a test lead in the room, there's always areas for improvement. And so even if you were to do call it a 2-hour, let's map our value stream, and you can point to those areas where you don't know, but you at least know the rough timings of how long it takes, you can add value at that point. And the reason you can add value at that point is because you'll have one person saying, I can speed it up here. I know I've got slower points there. That information and that result, where you have a big question mark over a particular area, can be bubbled up. And I'll tell you, when you say, I know it takes roughly this amount of time for it to get to us, and then from us, we're going to improve it and shrink it down by this much. It's not the constraint. The constraint's over here, but we're going to improve our part and then push it down. That actually is really interesting. I have yet to see anywhere where someone in charge of application delivery doesn't care about all aspects. And when you can bubble that up as a metric and say, there's question mark, you'll get people involved at that point. If you've got one person, like I said, starting with that one person as a change agent, because guaranteed the people that are upstream looking down are suggesting, well, man, I wish I knew what was going on more. And you're opening the door by saying, we'll be more transparent. Here you go. We'll give you the metrics. Just, help us show together what we're working on together. It is valuable. You'll see that people come together because it's that fear of missing out mentality. They don't want to be the group that has the big question mark above their area.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. If you even look at a segment of the values chain, don't look at the whole thing, but say just look at QA, you can really make some positive improvements in that space and get your own house in order, and then look at extending it to other areas as well and seeing the benefits of the whole value stream.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're about 2 minutes to the top of the hour, so we're going to have to close out the question and answer period. As I expected, we didn't get to all of the questions. So as I said before, just know the folks at Plutora do have a copy of all of the questions, and I'm sure somebody from the organization will be more than happy to follow up with you offline. We had some really great questions, and I'm sorry that we did not have enough time to get to all of them. So, but I guess you could blame Jeff and James for speaking too long for that. So, but before we close things out, I do want to do our drawing for the 3 $50 Amazon gift cards. So without further ado, let me go ahead and draw our first name here. Let's see, our first name is, the first winner is Brian Copeland. Congratulations, Brian. Second question, or sorry, second winner is, let's see, Chris Putnam. Congratulations, Chris. And our third winner is Irene Houska. Congratulations, Irene. And I will be contacting you guys offline to get that Amazon gift card over to you. Do want to remind the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any of the event or all of it, or if you just want to listen to it again and watch it, I guess in this case, you will have the opportunity to do so. You can just check it out online. We'll be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And then it's also going to be living on the DevOps.com website. So you can always find it there. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section. It should be right there waiting for you. Jeff and James, thank you so much for such a great presentation. Appreciate it. I know the audience got a lot out of it. I did too.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Also want to thank the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.